Hey, welcome back. This is the second part of how to screen your potential tenant. Now, if you haven't watched the part 1 video yet, I'm going to link it up here and make sure you watch that first before you go any further with this video. Otherwise, you might be a little bit lost. So in part 1, we talked about what kind of information we would be asking potential tenant to provide to us. Now that you have all the information, how do you determine if they're a good fit? What kind of question you can ask and what kind of question you cannot ask. This is what we're going to discuss. Now, before we go any further, let me give you some backgrounders. When you are dealing with tenancy, you're not only dealing with the Residential Tenancies Act, but you are also dealing with the Ontario Human Rights Code. And that's something that a lot of landlords forget, is that there are certain questions you are not allowed to ask potential applicants. So what are some of the questions you cannot ask? You cannot ask them if they are pregnant. You cannot ask them if they're married, if they're single or divorced. You cannot ask them if they intend to have more children. You cannot ask them what is their ethnic background and what is their religion. You cannot ask them if they're a Canadian citizen. You cannot ask them their sexual orientation. And you cannot ask them if they smoke or if they have pets. And one of the strangest questions is you are not allowed to ask them what is their age. So having said that, now there are ways for us to find out these information without asking them directly. So if they provided those information to you and you're able to answer those questions based on the information provided, then you haven't violated the Ontario Human Rights Code. So from part 1 of the video, now that we have their driver license, we know their sex, we know their age, the year they're born, and we're gonna be able to answer some of the questions that you weren't allowed to ask. Now, legally speaking, even with the name and a lot of the information you've been given, you're not allowed to actually Google them on social media, because you may be privy to information that you're not supposed to have. Let's say you see that they may be of a different sexual orientation than you would have liked. That kind of information may cause you to be biased against renting to them, and that is against the Ontario Human Rights Code. So I know a lot of landlords will do that. The first thing they go on is they Google the tenant's name and see what comes up. Just know that you are not supposed to do that. Now, one site that I do use to verify the information is LinkedIn. Now remember, LinkedIn is not so much a personal social media, it's more of a job search public forum where they will post their job criteria, their job history, experiences, hoping that other recruiter will find them. So it's a different social media than traditional social media like Facebook or Instagram, where a lot of personal information is posted. LinkedIn is more for work. So that's something that I will be comfortable using to verify their employment records or employment history. They told me that they work at these 3 businesses. I want to see those are listed on their LinkedIn profile, and it gives me a little better assurance that they're telling the truth. So what can you ask? Now you can ask about their work, how long they work there, what is their capacity, the actual work that they do. You can ask them about their income. Those are valid questions. You can also ask them why they're moving to your unit. If they're currently renting at another unit, you want to find out why they're moving, and you find out that before you call the landlord reference, so that you can cross-check if the story matches. Let's say they tell you that their current landlord is selling the unit, or they're moving in themselves, they need to vacate. You need to verify, you can verify all of that when you do your landlord reference check. You can also ask about who's going to be staying with them, what are the ages, just so you know. Now, if you have a condominium, it's very, very important that you ask how many people are actually going to stay with them. Now, although you cannot limit who actually stays there, but the information that they give you initially will help you determine if you can actually rent to them, because a lot of condominium, they actually have limit of how many people can be in a unit. Let's say it's a 1-bedroom unit, you can have maximum of 2 adults plus maybe a child, but you cannot have 4 adults in a 1-bedroom unit. And a 2-bedroom unit, maximum of 4 adults. So check with your property management office, see if they have guidelines as to how many people are actually allowed to be in a unit before you rent to, let's say, a family of 5, 6. They might be too large for your condominium bylaw, and you may get into trouble. They might have to ask you to end the tenancy. All right, so now that you have collected all the information you wanted to know, you've already asked all the questions. So what's the criteria for you to decide if you want to rent to them? I'm going to give you my criteria, and you can use that as a guideline. In terms of income versus rent ratio, what I call a debt ratio, my guideline is usually 35 to 40% is what I'm very comfortable with. Let's say they're getting a mortgage. This is what lenders will gauge based on as well, which is their total debt ratio. So it's very easy to calculate. If you're a landlord, whatever your rent you're charging, multiply that by 12. So that gives you the yearly rent that they're going to be paying. And you ask them how much do they make a year, and you divide that into their how much they make, and it gives you a percentage. And if it's more than 40%, you need to decide if they are going to be a good candidate, because don't forget they will have to pay income taxes on the income. They're going to have other living expenses. So if the ratio is more than 40%, it really doesn't give you a lot of cushion in case of they run into some sort of emergency, then they are not going to be able to pay your rent. Now, what if is someone that's applying that they don't have any income? A student may be applying to you and they don't have any income, or someone that's newly arrived, they're looking for work, they don't have any income. Now, you can ask them to show you how they can prove to you that they're able to pay the rent. If they provide to you their banking information, they provide to you that they have savings, then it gives you another piece of information to decide. Now, remember, I've had a lot of experience renting to students, and for the most part, they have been fantastic. I've never run into any real issues with them not paying, because a lot of the overseas students, they're sent here to study and they're actually cherish the opportunity. They actually don't want to cause issues because they may have records when they go back. They don't want that. So for the most part, they've been very good. Now remember, if the tenant voluntarily provides additional deposit to you as a form of guarantee that they're going to be paying. I've seen students or newly arrived immigrants, they provide the full year ahead. Now, if they provide to you voluntarily, you can take it. But you cannot, remember, you cannot request more than first and last month. That is the law. You can't. But if they say, hey, what if I give you a few more months, would you take me in? No problem. You can accept those money. Now, in terms of the number of occupants or who's living there, as I said before, if you have a condominium unit, you need to make sure that the number of people staying there do not violate any bylaws of the condo corporation. But if you have a freehold property, you have to remember that whoever they list, that's going to live there, even though your lease might say that only these people can live there. This is not enforceable. They can actually bring other people in to your rental property and stay there. And there's nothing you can do. As long as they're not causing issues, they're not causing damages, you cannot kick them out. So my suggestion would be for you to pay a visit yearly. At the minimum, every year, you should go and check out the unit and make sure everything is still good. If a tenant has been there for a long time and they've always shown to be clean and conscientious tenant, then if you don't visit them every year, that should be okay. But at your own discretion, you should always visit the unit and make sure that it's not overcrowded, there hasn't been any damages caused. Now, the last criteria is one of the biggest criteria that a lot of landlords will determine if they will rent to the tenant is smoking and pets. Now, I gotta be honest with you, even though your lease might say no pets or no smoking, those clauses are not enforceable under the Act. Now, truth be told, someone could be telling you that they don't smoke, but they end up taking up smoking a month or two after they move into your unit, or that they don't have any pets, but they get a pet after they moved in. There is nothing you can do as long as the smoking and the pets are not causing damages to your unit, you cannot evict them. So now you're ready to decide if you're going to rent to them. Now, if you have decided you're going to rent to them, it's easy. You continue with the paperwork, voila, you've got a new tenant. But what if you don't want to rent to the current applicant and you need to give them an answer? My biggest advice or tips or whatever you call it to you is never ever give them the actual reason why you don't want to rent to them. You don't want to violate any human rights code, and you do not want to contravene any section of the Act. So how do you say no? Very easy. You call them up and say, thank you for your applications. We have decided that we want to wait a little bit longer for the right applicant. So they're gonna ask you, what was wrong with me? You'll say nothing. I don't mean you don't say anything. I mean, you will tell them nothing is wrong with their application. All the information they provided is perfect, but we've decided that we want to wait a little bit longer. Do not ever give any reason. Whatever it is, whatever you don't like about them, don't tell them, because you're not obligated to give a reason. You can just tell them that you want to wait a little bit longer for another application. So as you can see, screening tenant is not so easy. There are so many things could go wrong, and it's a very detailed process that you can only become good when you have a lot of experience. There are so many nuances that I cannot possibly go into in these videos. So my advice to you is hire a professional realtor that's going to be able to help you navigate through all of this. You can lean on them for their intuition, for their experience, and their knowledge to tell you things that you may have missed, because you're dealing with it firsthand. You are party to the transaction, but the realtor can become impartial and they can give you objective suggestion that may help you decide one way or the other. So seriously consider hiring somebody to help you with the process to ensure that you find the perfect tenant for your rental property. So if you have any further questions about screening tenants, you can either comment below, put your question there, I'll make sure I answer that, or connect with me either with Instagram. My handle is @homesbysun, or you can text me at 416-617-9997, and I look forward to chatting with you privately regarding whatever questions you have. Thank you so much for watching. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe below, hit the bell icon, and so you can be notified when I post my next video. Thank you, and hopefully this was useful to you, and I will see you in the next video. Take care. Cheers.